What's going on, guys? Salty Pogue here. I'd like to preface this video by saying while I don't think it's necessary to incorporate absolute realism in most shooter games out there, this video is meant to serve more or less as an open letter to our niche Milsim style developers. I've noticed a plethora of deficiencies and fallacies I'll be passively addressing throughout this video that I've come to understand is convoluted education or surface level research. So in addition to lightly touching on internal ballistics, the primary focus of this video is on external ballistics. So let's get started. But before the bullet is even fired, there's two factors that need to be in tandem with each other. These are barrel length and rifle twist rate. Your barrel length for one obviously determines travel time in said barrel, but general rule of thumb is the longer the barrel, the more pressure is built up behind the round, increasing its velocity as well as effective distance. The second factor to this is your twist rate. Your twist rate measures the distance the bullet travels down the barrel before completing one full revolution. Some weapon systems, such as handguns, may not complete a full revolution before exiting the barrel, whereas weapon systems designed for extreme distance may have up to 2 or 3 revolutions before exiting the barrel. To give you an idea, depending on the individual cartridge you're firing, both your barrel length and twist rate are what's going to affect stability the most at range. I'll spare you explanation of head spacing, landing, stuff like that. It's more or less just weaponsmithing stuff or just advanced reloading for niche weapons. Alright, now let's move on to actual ballistics. Everything that should happen in the milliseconds from when you squeeze the trigger to when that round lands on your ideal target. Now some of you keen-eyed viewers may have looked at various weapon systems and thought, if the sights are all the way up there and the barrel's all the way down there, what the hell is happening in this space to make my desired impact? I'd like to introduce to you the concept of battle zero, otherwise just zeroing. This is where we'll see a difference between point-and-click games like Call of Duty and Rainbow Six Siege, whether it be impossible engagement angles or arbitrary distances, and it seems like no matter where you're aiming is exactly where your round hits, as if a laser comes out of the sights or optics themselves at light speed. On the other hand, this is where a lot of our milsims will call it a day. By incorporating this one feature with a one-size-fits-all approach, it provides the illusion of authenticity of those inexperienced in these topics. We're going to see how hurdling this bar that's basically laying on the ground is considered a grand feature in determining realism in games these days. Taking into consideration the projectile, in this case a bullet is being propelled out of a barrel, we can achieve a zero by ever so slightly inclining the angle of the barrel as well as the slightest down tilt on your sights and optics. For all intents and purposes, we'll be utilizing a standard M855 5.56x45 fired from an M4 carbine with a barrel length of 14.5 inches and a rifle twist rate of 1 in 7 in this example.
The numbers, Mason. What do they mean?
I'm choosing this setup combination because of the fact it's a familiar setup that I memorized from both basic training, but over the years, it's how I train soldiers in both BRM principles as well as basic fundamental ballistics comprehension. Right now we're focusing on the Western style zero. We'll talk about traditional Soviet zeros for Kalashnikov platforms, explore key differences, and see if we can understand varying sights based on fundamental differences. So we visualize two lines, one from the barrel going outwards representing a projectile, and the other from your sights representing your line of sight. You can see these two lines overlap. This first point of parallax is your near zero. This is where your round rises up to your rifle's line of sight. As the round continues to rise above your line of sight, it struggles to fight against air friction and gravity, descending back down once again along the vertical axis of your line of sight. The second point of parallax between your bullet's trajectory and your line of sight is your far zero. Now, Big Army had enough foresight to develop consistency along its evolving generations of rifles and cartridges. Whether it be the M193 Full Metal Jacket, M855, or the M855A1, each maintains similar flight characteristics when used in conjunction with a standardized platform. Now let's talk about zeros. There's primarily 3 zeros you will use. First is your trade-off standard 25-300 meter zero, with 25 meters being your near zero and 300 meters being your far zero. Second is your 50-200 meter zero, with the prior concept applied with 50 meters being your near zero and 200 meters being your far zero. And finally, your 100 meter zero, most notable by its single parallax point at 100 meters. Now, depending on which sight or optic you're utilizing determines which zero you're going to use, such as the M68 CCO for a 25-300 meter zero, EOTech hollow sight for a 200 meter zero, or ACOG for 100 meter zero. But first I want to expand more on zeros, primarily how the trajectory changes based on the desired zero. First point of failure we need to take into consideration is height over bore. This is the vertical distance in between your barrel and your line of sight. In other words, when you try to barely peek over a surface and you end up shooting at said surface, yeah, it's your height over bore deficit. So let's simulate this from the shooter's perspective with a 25-300 meter zero. The height over bore with an M4 carbine is about 3 inches. 2.975 if you want to get real specific, or we could just say fuck it and call it 3 inches. From point blank to 25 meters, you can imagine the round coming up behind your front sight post until it reaches your near zero at 25 meters, clearing your height over bore deficit and continuing in an upward trajectory until reaching its zenith of about 9 inches at about 120 to 150 meters before descending back down to its second point of parallax at your far zero at 300 meters. The trajectory the bullet takes is known as a parabolic arc. Depending on the zero determines varying arc zeniths at different distances. For example, a 6-inch vertical zenith at 80 to 100 meters is expected for a 50-200 meter zero, and a 3-inch vertical zenith with a 100 meter zero intercepting the single point of parallax at 100 meters before descending below your line of sight. Now we can start to see the method to the madness with training purposes encouraging you to aim center mass, with the obvious reason being firing at the largest part of the target will grant the best odds of a hit, but executing proper BRM on a target under ideal conditions depending on distance to target with a 300 meter zero, you're landing a hit anywhere from the sternum to the clavicle on an average size human and potentially lower as distances increase. So these are your common Western point zeros. Oh, and if you need a quick reference, your standard front sight post is roughly equivalent width as a target at 300 meters. So if they're slightly larger than the width of the front sight post, they might be more in the realm of 200 meters. And if the front sight post is thicker than your target, you can guarantee they're past 300 meters. And if you're rocking the BUIS system, apply the aforementioned to a 100 meter target, as BUISs are commonly designed for a fixed 100 meter zero unless specifically designed otherwise. Just, read the box and make an informed decision from there. Now, the traditional Soviet zero designed for the Kalashnikov exploits a parabolic arc to its benefit. We're going to start by zeroing our weapon system to 200 meters and place a target at 100 meters. Using your front sight post to gauge distance based on the same disciplines we discussed earlier with the M4 front sight post and a target at 300 meters. Yes, this applies exactly the same to a target at 200 meters for the Kalashnikov platform. Let's bear in mind, the M43 7.62 by 39 is a heavier and slower round than the 5.56 by 45, so at 100 meters, we're looking for a grouping about 4 inches above your point of aim. While the same fundamental principles are present for each, it's a matter of focal point between the two, both demonstrating the strengths and weaknesses, Western zeros proving most accurate at either 1 or 2 specified distances, or Soviet platforms adopting a kill zone approach. Now, I want you to envision, if you will, a rifle mounted to a table. I'm talking impossibly mounted so recoil's not a factor, always maintaining perfect sight picture on a predetermined target. Alright, real quick, we're going to digress because I'd really like to talk about your mom. Alright, I'm not all that childish, but let's discuss your Minute of Man. In short, Minute of Man capable weapons is a designation for weapons displaying the ability to reliably and consistently engage targets at a range of 300 meters. We're going to break this down even further to a phrase familiar to some. MOA, minute of angle, minute of arc, whatever you know it as, it's all synonymous. Now, remember earlier in the beginning of the video, I mentioned twist rate inside of a barrel. Now, I want you to imagine spinning a top. When you first give it a good spin at an appropriate speed, it spins fast, but more importantly, it revolves in a centralized location. As the top begins to lose centrifugal force, its circular wobble pattern begins to widen as it struggles to stay up, right before deviating so far from its origin, it loses stability altogether. Now let's get back to our table-mounted carbine. So our bullets do the same thing and struggle against both air resistance and gravity. The allotted tolerance for the M4 carbine is 2 MOA. Basically, at 100 meters, you can expect a maximum deviation of 2 inches, and this consistently increases, doubling in its initial factor. So basically, for every 100-meter increment, you're going to add 2 inches to that maximum deviation. Some precision rifles can achieve sub-MOA groups, or groupings within an inch, at certain given distances. This is referred to as your ballistic coefficient, or your bullet's ability to fight wind resistance and make an accurate group. Now, when it comes to the actual stabilization of said bullet, the 3 main factors we're going to worry about are the rifle twist rate, bullet weight, and velocity. For example, super sciencey people who are a hell of a lot smarter than I'll ever be figured out that for the M4 carbine to maintain a 2 MOA tolerance, the barrel has to be 14.5 inches with a 1 in 7 twist or 1 full revelation per 7 inches with a 62 grain M855 traveling at a muzzle velocity of about 3,060 feet per second. So, how can we verify this without millions of dollars of testing that sciencey science people have already put in to achieve these results? Well, let's look at everything we've learned so far, both in regards to the M4 carbine's capabilities and compare it to TRADOC qualification standards. Whether you're qualifying on pop-up Ivans or paper targets, we start by verifying our zero. First, we'll set our rear sight aperture for a 300 meter zero, ensuring we set our near zero for 25 meters, and far zero to 300 meters. We can utilize Big Army's zero target. The silhouette on this target represents a combatant at 300 meters. We will place this target at 25 meters from our fixed firing position. Exercising basic rifle marksmanship is the most important fundamental aspect in this. These 4 fundamentals, or 5 if you're old Army like myself, will give you the best results. So what I'm saying is getting hammered with your buddies and trying to zero while standing on the back of your truck is more than likely going to leave you wondering how the hell you got the only 10 MOA rifle at 25 meters in existence. So from our stable firing position, we can ensure proper sight picture by placing our front sight posts slightly overlapping the base of the silhouette. Under ideal circumstances, including environmental factors as well as mitigating operator error, the point of this is to ensure a few things. First of which is ensuring you as a shooter are incorporating proper BRM fundamentals. Second is making sure your rifle is properly zeroed, and as long as the first 2 boxes check out, we are making sure it's capable of maintaining a minute of man compliance. As long as these 3 boxes are checked, you can be confident your rifle can reliably and consistently engage your point range target of 300 meters. And I will emphasize this once again because I cannot ingrain this in people enough. You're only going to be able to achieve these specific results utilizing standardized weapon platforms and ammunition. You're not going to get the same result if you use your buddy's 6-inch short barrel rifle with the cheapest box of ammunition you could find at fucking Sportsman's Warehouse or whatever. Alright guys, so we've covered everything in regards to ballistics, from preliminary factors such as cartridge load and barrel length all the way to what happens from when pin hits primer to when bullet hits target. If there's anything else you'd like me to elaborate on or an adjacent topic altogether, let me know in the comments below.